Elena Vasquez stared at the glowing screen in her laboratory, her hands shaking as she read the research data. The blue light from the monitor cast strange shadows on her face. Outside the reinforced windows, the red mountains of Kepler 442c stretched into the alien sky. She had lived on this planet for 5 years, but it still felt like a prison. Marcus Dane walked into the lab without knocking. He never knocked. Elena quickly closed the files on her computer, but she knew he had already seen what she was working on. Her husband was a big man with cold gray eyes and scars on his hands from his early days in the mining business. Now he owned 3 major corporations and controlled most of the human settlements on this world. "What did you find?" Marcus asked. His voice was quiet, but Elena knew that tone. It meant danger. "Nothing important," Elena said. She tried to keep her voice steady. "Just basic research on the local wildlife." Marcus walked closer. Elena could smell the expensive cologne he always wore, trying to cover the smell of the mines that never really left him. "Don't lie to me, Elena. I saw the files about the shadow maws. You found something useful?" Elena's heart raced. The shadow maws were the most dangerous predators on Kepler 442c. They were like wolves, but bigger and smarter. Their skin could change color to match their surroundings, making them almost invisible. For months, Elena had been studying their hunting patterns and communication methods. What she had discovered could change everything. "They communicate using bioelectric signals," Elena said carefully, "like many Earth animals, but more complex." "Can we control them?" Marcus asked. His eyes lit up with the same look he got when he talked about new mining operations. "Marcus, these are living creatures. They're not tools." He grabbed her arm, not hard enough to leave a mark, but firm enough to remind her who was in charge. "Everything on this planet is a tool, Elena. That includes you. Your research belongs to me. Your discoveries belong to me. You belong to me." Elena pulled away from him. "I won't help you turn animals into weapons." Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You will. Because if you don't, I'll make sure every research facility in human space knows what happens to scientists who betray their contracts. You'll never work again." After Marcus left, Elena sat alone in her lab. She looked at her hands, small and soft compared to his. But she was smarter than him. She had always been smarter. While Marcus built his empire through fear and violence, Elena had built something else. She had built a plan. For 2 years, she had been preparing for this moment. Hidden in her body were small neural implants, illegal modifications that enhanced her reflexes and gave her access to the planet's data networks. She had installed them piece by piece during routine medical scans, using her knowledge of biology to hide them from the security systems. Elena opened a hidden partition on her computer. Inside were copies of all her research, not just on the shadow maws, but on every dangerous species on Kepler 442c. She had also been studying the planet's geography, weather patterns, and the movements of Marcus's security forces. Tonight she would use all of that knowledge. The storm hit just after midnight. Elena had been tracking it for 3 days, watching the swirling clouds on the weather satellites. The wind howled against the compound's walls and rain hammered the metal roof. Perfect conditions for an escape. Elena dressed in her hiking gear, dark clothes that would blend with the night. She packed a small bag with food, water purification tablets, and a portable shelter. Around her neck, she wore a small device that looked like jewelry, but was actually a powerful computer containing all her research. Marcus would kill to get this information back. The compound had 12 security checkpoints between Elena's lab and the outer perimeter, but Elena knew something the guards didn't. She had discovered that the storm created electromagnetic interference that blinded their sensors for exactly 47 seconds every few minutes. She had timed it perfectly. Elena slipped out of her lab during the first blind spot. She moved quickly but carefully through the corridors, her enhanced reflexes helping her avoid the automated cameras. At checkpoint 3, she used her access codes to open the door. At checkpoint 7, she crawled through a maintenance tunnel she had discovered months ago. The hardest part was the outer wall. It was 20 feet high and topped with electric wire, but Elena had found a weak spot where the metal had corroded from the acid rain. She had been secretly weakening it for weeks using small amounts of solvent from her lab. As the storm reached its peak, Elena climbed over the wall. The electric wire sparked and died as the rain shorted it out. She dropped to the ground on the other side and ran toward the mountains. Behind her, alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed in the compound windows. Elena smiled grimly. She had left a small electromagnetic pulse device in her lab, set to activate 30 minutes after she left. It would destroy her computer and make it look like the storm had caused an electrical failure. By the time Marcus realized she was gone, she would have hours of head start. Elena ran through the night following paths she had memorized from satellite images. The rain was cold and sharp, cutting through her clothes, but she didn't stop. Behind her, she could hear the sound of vehicles starting up in the compound. Dogs barking, men shouting orders. The foothills of the Crimson Peaks were dangerous even in daylight. At night, during a storm, they were deadly. Elena knew this. But she also knew that Marcus's men would be cautious. They would wait for morning. Thinking that no one could survive out here in these conditions, they were wrong. Elena had been studying this planet for 5 years. She knew where the predators hunted and where they slept. She knew which plants were safe to touch and which ones would kill her. Most importantly, she knew about the caves. 3 hours after leaving the compound, Elena found the first cave. It was small and hidden behind a waterfall, exactly where her geological surveys had predicted. She crawled inside and activated her portable shelter, a smart fabric that would keep her warm and dry. As she sat in the darkness, listening to the storm rage outside, Elena thought about what came next. Marcus would send his best hunters after her. Captain Voss and his mercenary team, enhanced soldiers with cybernetic implants and military training. They would have advanced tracking equipment, aircraft, and no concern for her safety. But Elena had advantages too. She knew this planet better than anyone. She had allies Marcus didn't know about. And most importantly, she was fighting for her life and freedom, while his men were just following orders. Elena checked her small computer. The data was safe, encrypted with codes that would take even Marcus's experts months to break. This information could save the planet's ecosystem or destroy it. She would not let it fall into the wrong hands. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the peaks of the mountains. Somewhere up there, in the highest and most dangerous parts of Kepler 442c, lived the Alpha Monarchs, enhanced humans who had adapted to this world in ways that seemed almost magical. Elena had never seen one, but she had read the stories. If the stories were true, the Alpha Monarchs were the only power on this planet that Marcus feared. If she could reach their territory, she might find safety. But first, she had to survive the hunt that would begin at dawn. Elena closed her eyes and tried to rest. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, but also new possibilities. She had taken the first step toward freedom. Now she had to prove that one determined human could overcome any obstacle. The storm began to fade as morning approached. Soon the hunt would begin. Elena woke to the sound of aircraft engines in the distance. The storm had passed and pale sunlight filtered through the cave entrance. She checked her watch. She had slept for 3 hours. Not enough, but it would have to do. She packed her shelter quickly and crept to the cave mouth. Through the waterfall, she could see 2 black helicopters circling the valley below. Marcus had wasted no time. Elena recognized the aircraft. Military-grade hunters with thermal sensors and electromagnetic scanners. But the waterfall would mask her heat signature, and the mineral deposits in these caves would confuse their electronics. Elena studied the terrain ahead. The path to the higher mountains led through a series of rocky canyons and dense forests. She would have to cross open ground in several places, making her vulnerable to the aircraft. But she had an advantage the hunters didn't expect. For months, Elena had been studying the behavior patterns of Kepler 442c's wildlife. She knew when the predators hunted, where they nested, and how they moved through their territory. More importantly, she had discovered something about the shadow moths that could save her life. Elena climbed out of the cave and began moving up the mountain. She stayed close to the rock walls, using the natural formations to hide from the circling aircraft. Her enhanced reflexes helped her move quietly over the loose stones and fallen logs. After an hour of climbing, she heard boots on the trail below. Elena pressed herself against a large boulder and listened. At least 6 men moving fast but not quietly. They were following her trail from the night before. Captain Voss was leading them, his voice carrying up the mountainside as he gave orders to his team. Spread out. She can't have gone far in this terrain. Remember, the boss wants her alive, but don't take unnecessary risks. This woman is more dangerous than she looks. Elena almost smiled. Voss was right about that. She waited until the soldiers passed her hiding spot, then continued up the mountain. She was moving parallel to their path now, staying above them where the terrain was more difficult but the cover was better. The first test came at midday. Elena reached a wide clearing where she would be exposed to the aircraft for several hundred yards. But she had timed this carefully. According to her research, this was when the shadow maws took their daily rest. The pack that lived in this area would be sleeping in the dense brush at the far end of the clearing. Elena pulled out a small device from her backpack. It looked like a simple flashlight, but it was actually a bioelectric signal generator. She had built it using components from her lab equipment. Based on her research into shadow maw communication, she activated the device and sent out a series of pulsing lights, blue, green, and white, in a specific pattern. The signal meant friend and no threat in the shadow maw language. Elena held her breath and waited. A low growl came from the brush ahead. Then another. Slowly, 3 massive shapes emerged from the undergrowth. The shadow maws were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Their fur shifted from brown to gray to green as they moved, perfectly matching their surroundings. Their eyes glowed yellow in the sunlight, and their teeth were as long as Elena's fingers. The largest shadow maw, the pack leader, approached Elena carefully. She held perfectly still, keeping the signal device active. The creature sniffed the air around her, then made a soft chuffing sound. It had accepted her presence. Elena began walking across the clearing. The 3 shadow maws walked with her, one on each side and one behind. To the aircraft overhead, it would look like 4 predators moving together. The pilots would never imagine that one of them was human. Halfway across the clearing, Elena heard the helicopters changing direction. They were coming closer, probably attracted by the movement. But the shadow maws didn't run. They were apex predators, afraid of nothing that flew in the sky. One of the helicopters dropped low, trying to get a better look. The pilot probably wanted to study the pack behavior. Elena kept walking steadily, fighting every instinct that told her to run. If she broke the formation now, the shadow maws might turn on her, and the aircraft would certainly spot her. The helicopter hovered directly overhead for 30 seconds that felt like 30 minutes. Elena could feel the downdraft from its rotors, but she maintained her pace. Finally, the aircraft pulled away, and she reached the safety of the forest on the far side of the clearing. The shadow maws stopped at the edge of their territory. The pack leader looked at Elena one last time, then led his companions back into the brush. Elena sent a final thank you signal with her device, though she wasn't sure if they understood gratitude. The afternoon brought new challenges. Elena's trail led through a series of steep ravines where the acoustics carried sound for miles. She could hear Voss's team getting closer, their heavy boots and military equipment making them easy to track. They were good soldiers, but they didn't understand this environment the way Elena did. She found a narrow ledge that ran along one side of a deep canyon. It was barely wide enough for one person, and the rock was slippery from the morning rain. But it would allow her to bypass a section where Voss's team was waiting to ambush her. Elena edged along the ledge, pressing her back against the rock wall. 60 feet below, the canyon floor was littered with sharp stones and the bones of animals that had fallen from these heights. One slip would mean certain death. Halfway across, Elena heard voices echoing from the canyon ahead. More of Marcus's men moving to cut off her escape route. She was trapped between 2 groups of hunters hanging on a ledge with nowhere to go. Then Elena remembered something from her geological surveys. These canyons were formed by underground rivers that had cut through the soft rock over thousands of years. Some of those rivers were still flowing, hidden behind rockfalls and debris. Elena found what she was looking for, a crack in the canyon wall just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Water trickled out of it, confirming her theory. She took a deep breath and pushed herself into the narrow opening. The tunnel was dark and cold, filled with the sound of rushing water. Elena had to crawl on her hands and knees, following the underground stream. The passage was so narrow that her backpack scraped against the walls. But it was leading upward, toward the higher mountains. After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, Elena saw light ahead. She crawled toward it and emerged from a small cave opening on the far side of the canyon system. She was now several miles ahead of her pursuers, and they would have no idea how she had disappeared. But Elena's relief was short-lived. As she climbed out of the cave, she saw something that made her blood freeze. Carved into the rock above the cave entrance was a symbol, 3 intersecting circles with a crown at the center. She had seen this symbol in old survey reports and expedition logs. It was the mark of the Alpha Monarchs. She had entered their territory. Elena looked around nervously. The landscape here was different from the lower mountains. The trees were taller and older, with silver bark that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. The air itself felt different, charged with some kind of energy that made her skin tingle. According to the old stories, the Alpha Monarchs were enhanced humans who had adapted to this planet in ways that went beyond normal genetic modification. They were said to be faster, stronger, and smarter than regular humans. Some reports claimed they could communicate with the planet's wildlife and predict weather patterns days in advance, but the most important thing Elena knew about the Alpha Monarchs was that they protected their territory fiercely. No one entered their domain without permission. Those who tried were never seen again. Elena had no choice but to continue forward. Behind her, Marcus's hunters were still coming. Ahead lay the unknown territory of beings who might be humanity's greatest evolution or its greatest threat. She began climbing toward the highest peaks, where her fate would be decided. Elena climbed for hours through the strange territory of the Alpha Monarchs. The trees here were unlike anything she had seen in her 5 years on Kepler 4A42c. Their silver bark pulsed with a faint inner light, and their leaves whispered in languages she couldn't understand. The air smelled of ozone and growing things, electric and alive. As the sun began to set, Elena's strength finally gave out. She had been running and climbing for nearly 18 hours with only brief rests. Her legs shook with exhaustion, and her vision blurred from dehydration. She stumbled and fell beside a stream that bubbled up from underground springs. Elena managed to drink some water and eat a small portion of her remaining food. But as darkness fell, the temperature dropped rapidly. This high in the mountains, even the planet's mild climate became deadly cold at night. Elena knew she needed shelter, but she was too tired to set up her portable camp. That was when she saw the temple. It rose from the mountainside like something from an ancient dream. The building was carved directly into the living rock. Its walls, covered with the same glowing symbols Elena had seen at the cave entrance. Tall pillars supported a roof that seemed to float impossibly in the air. Soft blue light emanated from crystals embedded in the stone, providing just enough illumination to see the intricate carvings that covered every surface. Elena approached the temple carefully. Every instinct told her this was a sacred place, somewhere not meant for ordinary humans. But the cold was getting worse, and she could see storm clouds gathering overhead. Another night in the open would probably kill her. The temple's entrance was a tall archway with no door. Elena stepped inside and gasped. The interior was vast, much larger than the outside suggested. The walls were covered with murals depicting the history of this world, ancient civilizations, great battles, and the coming of humans from the stars. At the far end of the main chamber, a set of stairs led up to a raised platform where a simple stone chair sat beneath a dome of crystal. Elena found a quiet corner where she could rest without disturbing anything important. She was just setting up her shelter when she heard footsteps echoing through the temple. Someone was coming. Elena grabbed her backpack and looked for a place to hide, but the footsteps were already too close. A figure appeared in the temple entrance, silhouetted against the starlight outside. The man who entered was tall and moved with the fluid grace of a natural predator. In the blue light of the temple crystals, Elena could see that he was human but changed. His skin had a faint metallic sheen, and his eyes glowed with the same inner light as the temple walls. Silver lines traced patterns across his arms and face, not tattoos but some kind of biomechanical enhancement that seemed to be part of his actual body. "You should not be here," the man said. His voice was calm but carried absolute authority. "This is a sacred place." Elena stood up slowly, keeping her hands visible. "I'm sorry. I was just looking for shelter from the storm." The man studied her with those glowing eyes. "You are the one they hunt. The woman who fled from the mining lord." "How do you know that?" "The Shadow Maws told us. They spoke of a small human who walked among them without fear, who knew their language." The man stepped closer. "I am Kai Thorn, guardian of the Crimson Peaks. This is my domain." Elena realized she was looking at one of the legendary Alpha Monarchs. Up close, Kai was even more impressive. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, and his enhanced muscles moved beneath his skin like steel cables. But despite his obvious power, he didn't seem threatening. There was wisdom in his glowing eyes and something like curiosity. "My name is Elena Vasquez. I'm a xenobiologist." "Yes," Kai said, "the one who studies life rather than destroying it. Your reputation is known to us." This surprised Elena. "How?" "We watch everything that happens in the lower mountains. We know about your husband's crimes against this world. We know about your research." Kai gestured to the murals on the temple walls. "This planet has seen many who would exploit its gifts. We have learned to recognize those who respect life and those who seek only profit." A rumble of thunder echoed through the temple. The storm Elena had been tracking was almost upon them. "My husband will be looking for me. His soldiers are already in your territory." Kai's expression hardened. "Marcus Dane's men crossed into our lands without permission. They have violated ancient treaties." "What treaties?" "When your people first came to this world, agreements were made. The corporations could mine in the designated areas. The Alpha Monarchs would protect the sacred mountains. For 20 years this balance has held." Kai turned to look at the temple's murals. "But some humans always want more than they deserve." Elena followed his gaze to one particular mural that showed humans and enhanced beings standing together beneath the light of Kepler 442c's twin moons. "You're not enemies? We are what humanity might become, given time and wisdom. Some of your people understand this. Others see us only as obstacles to their greed." Kai looked back at Elena. "The question is, which type are you?" Before Elena could answer, an explosion shook the temple. Dust fell from the ancient ceiling, and several of the crystal lights flickered. Through the entrance, Elena could see flashes of weapons fire lighting up the mountainside below. "They found me," Elena whispered. Kai moved to the temple entrance with inhuman speed. "Captain Voss and his mercenaries, they have brought heavy weapons and orbital support." He turned back to Elena, his glowing eyes now blazing with anger. "They dare to bring war to this sacred place." Another explosion, closer this time. Elena could hear the whine of aircraft engines and the distant sound of men shouting orders. "I should go. I won't let them destroy your temple because of me." "You will stay," Kai said firmly. "This violation of our territory cannot be ignored. The Alpha Monarchs have remained neutral in human conflicts for too long. Perhaps it is time for that to change." Kai walked to the center of the temple and placed his hand on a crystal formation that Elena hadn't noticed before. Immediately, the temple filled with a low humming sound. The crystals in the walls began to pulse in a rhythmic pattern, sending waves of blue light out into the night. "What are you doing?" Elena asked. "Calling my people," Kai replied, "and activating defenses that have slept for generations." The humming grew louder, and Elena felt a vibration through the stone floor. Outside, she could see answering lights appearing on peaks throughout the mountain range. The Alpha Monarchs were responding to their guardian's call. Another explosion shook the temple, but this time the crystal dome above the stone chair began to glow brighter. Elena realized that the entire temple was some kind of ancient technology, possibly built by the planet's original inhabitants. "Your research," Kai said suddenly. "The data you carry. Show it to me." Elena hesitated for only a moment, then pulled out her small computer. She connected it to one of the crystal formations, and immediately her research files appeared as holographic displays floating in the air above them. Kai studied the data with intense concentration. "You discovered how to communicate with the Shadow Maws," he said. "But this is only the beginning. Your work could unlock the secrets of every species on this world. That's why Marcus wants it so badly. He plans to weaponize the planet's wildlife." Kai's expression grew darker. "That must never happen. This world's creatures are not tools for human wars." A new sound reached them from outside, the distinctive roar of spacecraft engines. Marcus's orbital support was arriving. Elena looked through the temple entrance and saw lights descending from the sky like falling stars. "They have ships with particle weapons," Elena said. "They could level this entire mountain." Kai smiled, and for the first time since Elena had met him, he looked truly dangerous. "Let them come." It is time Marcus Dane learned what happens when humans forget their place in the natural order. The battle for the Crimson Peaks was about to begin. The first attack came at dawn. Marcus Dane's ships descended from orbit like metal vultures, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Elena watched from the temple entrance as Captain Voss led 3 companies of enhanced soldiers up the mountain trails. Behind them, hover tanks and armed drones provided support. "They have enough firepower to destroy half the mountain," Elena said. Kai stood beside her, completely calm despite the approaching army. "Power without wisdom is meaningless. Your husband will learn this today." The Alpha Monarchs began to appear on the peaks around them. Elena counted at least 50 figures moving across the mountainside with impossible speed and grace. They seemed to flow over the terrain like water, using their enhanced abilities to traverse paths that would be suicide for normal humans. The first clash came when Voss's advanced scouts encountered a group of Alpha Monarchs near the temple's outer defenses. Elena expected gunfire and explosions, but instead she heard only strange humming sounds and then silence. "What happened?" she asked. "The scouts have been neutralized," Kai replied. "My people prefer not to kill unless necessary. The men will wake in several hours with no memory of this place." But Marcus Dane was not interested in gentle solutions. His voice echoed across the mountainside from speakers on the hovering ships. "Kai Thorne, I know you're protecting the woman. Give her to me and my forces will withdraw. Refuse, and I will turn this mountain into glass." Kai stepped out of the temple where the ships could see him. When he spoke, his enhanced vocal cords projected his voice clearly across the peaks. "Marcus Dane, you have violated sacred ground and brought weapons of war to this holy place. Withdraw now or face the consequences." Marcus's laughter boomed from the ship speakers. "You're outnumbered 10 to 1, Thorne. I have orbital bombardment capabilities and enough firepower to level this entire region. Stand down." "Then let us see whose power is greater," Kai replied. The battle began with Marcus's ships opening fire on the temple. Particle beams and plasma bursts hammered the ancient structure, but instead of destroying it, the weapons seemed to be absorbed by the crystal formations. The temple's blue glow intensified, and Elena felt the stone floor vibrating with stored energy. Captain Voss led his soldiers in a direct assault up the temple steps. The Alpha Monarchs met them halfway, and Elena witnessed fighting unlike anything she had ever imagined. The enhanced humans moved like dancers, avoiding gunfire with fluid motions while striking back with precise, devastating blows. But Marcus's forces had numbers and heavy weapons. For every Alpha Monarch, there were 5 or 6 enemy soldiers. The battle lines began to shift as Voss's men pushed closer to the temple. That was when Elena made her decision. She couldn't hide in the temple while others fought to protect her. More importantly, she had information that could change the course of the battle. Elena activated her bioelectric signal device and set it to broadcast on all frequencies. The signal she sent was complex, woven from months of research into the communication patterns of every major predator species on Kepler 442c. She was calling for help, but not from humans. The response was immediate. A howl echoed across the mountainside, then another. From caves and dens throughout the Crimson Peaks, the native wildlife began to emerge. Shadow moths materialized from the rocks like living shadows. Sky hunters, the massive aerial predators that Elena had studied for years, descended from their high nests. Even the normally peaceful rock bears came lumber out of their winter dens, disturbed by the violence in their territory. Marcus's soldiers suddenly found themselves fighting on 2 fronts. The animals didn't attack randomly. They responded to Elena's signals, coordinating their assault with the Alpha Monarchs. It was the first time in recorded history that humans and Kepler 442c's wildlife had fought as allies. Captain Voss realized the tide was turning and decided to target Elena directly. He broke away from the main battle with a squad of his best soldiers, using jetpacks to reach the temple steps in seconds. "There's our target," Voss shouted, pointing at Elena. "Take her alive, but don't worry about keeping her pretty." Elena ran deeper into the temple as energy bolts scorched the walls around her. But Voss and his men were enhanced soldiers with military training. They would catch her in minutes. That was when Kai appeared between Elena and her pursuers. His eyes blazed with fury and the metallic lines on his skin pulsed with energy. "You will not harm her." Voss smiled and drew a plasma rifle. "Even an Alpha Monarch can't dodge light-speed weapons, Thorne." The captain fired, but Kai moved faster than Elena thought possible. He covered the distance to Voss in a single leap, his enhanced muscles propelling him through the air like a missile. The plasma bolt missed by inches, but Voss was ready for close combat. He pulled out a vibroblade, a weapon that could cut through enhanced human skin as easily as paper. The two warriors fought with deadly precision, enhanced abilities clashing in a dance of violence and skill. Elena watched in horror as Kai and Voss exchanged blows that would have killed normal humans. The Alpha Monarch was faster and stronger, but the captain had military training and better weapons. When Voss's blade found its mark, cutting across Kai's shoulder, Elena saw silver blood spray across the temple walls. Without thinking, Elena grabbed a piece of crystal that had broken from the temple wall during the bombardment. The fragment was sharp enough to use as a weapon. As Voss pressed his attack on the wounded Kai, Elena crept up behind the captain. She had never hurt another person in her life. Elena was a scientist, not a warrior, but as she watched Voss raise his blade for a killing blow, something fierce awakened in her heart. This man represented everything she hated: violence, greed, and the willingness to destroy anything beautiful for profit. Elena drove the crystal shard into Voss's back, between the plates of his armor. The captain screamed and spun around, swinging his vibroblade at her head, but Kai was there, catching the weapon in his bare hand. His enhanced grip crushed the blade like paper. "It is finished," Kai said, striking Voss with a blow that sent the captain flying across the temple. But the victory was short-lived. Outside, Marcus's ships had regrouped and were preparing for orbital bombardment. Elena could see the main weapons charging, preparing to turn the entire mountain into molten rock. "He's going to destroy everything," Elena said. "Even his own men." Kai stumbled, still bleeding from his wounds. "The temple's defenses can withstand much, but not orbital bombardment." Elena looked at the ancient murals surrounding them, then at her computer with its precious research data. An idea began to form in her mind. Dangerous, but possibly their only hope. "Kai, this temple is connected to the planet's systems, isn't it? The original inhabitants built it as some kind of control center." "Yes, but the activation codes were lost long ago." Elena smiled grimly. "Maybe not." She connected her computer to the temple's crystal network and began uploading her research files. But instead of just storing the data, she was using it as a translation matrix. For months, Elena had been studying the communication patterns of Kepler 442c's wildlife. What she had never realized was that these patterns were similar to the programming languages used by the planet's ancient technology. The animals weren't just talking to each other, and they were talking to the planet itself. The temple's crystals blazed with new light as Elena's translation program activated, systems that had been dormant for thousands of years. Deep beneath the mountain, massive power cores hummed to life. Across the planet's surface, weather control systems and electromagnetic field generators began responding to signals from the temple. Marcus's ships suddenly found themselves caught in a localized storm that appeared from nowhere. Lightning struck their hulls, and electromagnetic pulses scrambled their targeting systems. The orbital bombardment faltered as the captains fought to maintain control of their vessels. "Impossible!" Marcus's voice crackled over damaged speakers. "What did you do?" Elena stepped out of the temple, standing beside Kai as they faced the crippled fleet above. "I gave the planet a voice," she called out, "and it's telling you to leave." The battle was over, but the war for Kepler 442c's future was just beginning. 6 months after the battle at the temple, Elena stood on a balcony carved into the living rock of the Crimson Peaks. Below her, a new settlement spread across the mountainside like a garden of metal and stone. Humans and Alpha Monarchs worked together, building homes that blended technology with the natural beauty of Kepler 442c. The morning air was crisp and clean, free of the pollution that had once choked the valleys where Marcus's mining operations had scarred the planet. Those mines were closed now, their machinery dismantled and recycled into tools for creation rather than destruction. "The children are asking for another story," Kai said, joining Elena on the balcony. His shoulder had healed completely, leaving only a thin silver line where Voss's blade had cut him. Like all Alpha Monarchs, his enhanced biology repaired damage that would have crippled normal humans. Elena smiled, watching a group of human and Alpha Monarch children playing together in the settlement's central plaza. The young Alpha Monarchs were smaller versions of their parents, their biomechanical enhancements growing slowly as they matured. The human children wore simple devices that helped them communicate with their enhanced friends and understand the planet's natural systems. "What story do they want this time?" Elena asked. "The one about the day you spoke to the planet?" Elena laughed. "That wasn't magic, you know. It was just science. I figured out how to translate the communication patterns of the native wildlife into the programming language of the ancient technology. Magic and science are often the same thing, viewed from different perspectives," Kai replied. "What matters is that you gave voice to a world that had been silent for too long." A soft chime from Elena's communication device interrupted their conversation. She activated the holographic display and saw a familiar face. Commander Sarah Chen, head of the Colonial Administration for this sector of human space. "Dr. Vasquez," Chen said, her expression serious. "I need to speak with you about the Dane trial." Elena had been dreading this call. Marcus Dane's trial for crimes against humanity and environmental destruction had been ongoing for months. His corporate lawyers were fighting every charge, claiming he had been acting within his legal rights as a colonial administrator. "What's the verdict?" Elena asked. "Guilty on all counts," Chen replied. "Illegal weapons testing, environmental destruction, violation of indigenous rights treaties, and attempted murder. He's been sentenced to life imprisonment on a maximum security prison world." Elena felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Justice had been served, but the victory felt hollow. So much damage had been done to Kepler 442c's ecosystem that would take generations to heal. "There's something else," Chen continued. "The Colonial Council has voted to recognize the Alpha Monarchs as an independent nation. Your settlement will serve as an embassy between our peoples." This was better news. For too long, the enhanced humans had been treated as curiosities or threats rather than equals. Official recognition would give them legal protection and the right to govern their own territory. "What about the mining rights?" Elena asked. "Suspended indefinitely. The planet is being reclassified as a protected ecosystem. No further industrial development will be permitted without approval from both human and Alpha Monarch authorities." After the communication ended, Elena and Kai walked through their settlement. The fusion of human technology and Alpha Monarch bioengineering had created something beautiful and sustainable. Buildings grew from the mountain itself, their walls alive with climbing plants that helped regulate temperature and air quality. Solar collectors disguised as flower petals gathered energy during the day, while underground thermal systems provided warmth during the cold mountain nights. In the medical center, Elena's former research laboratory had been transformed into a center for interspecies medicine. Human doctors worked alongside Alpha Monarch healers, sharing knowledge that benefited both peoples. Elena's research on planetary wildlife had led to breakthrough treatments for diseases that had plagued the colonies for decades. "Do you ever regret leaving your old life?" Kai asked as they visited the children's school. Elena considered the question carefully. "I miss the simplicity sometimes. Research was easier when I only had to worry about data and theories. Now I have to think about politics, diplomacy, and the future of two species." She paused to watch a young human girl successfully communicate with a shadow maw cub using the bioelectric signals Elena had developed. The predator, no bigger than a house cat, playfully chased patterns of light the girl created with her device. "But I wouldn't change anything," Elena continued. "This is what I was meant to do. Not just study life, but help it flourish." That afternoon, Elena received an unexpected visitor. Captain Voss stood at the settlement's main gate, no longer wearing military armor but simple civilian clothes. He looked older, his cybernetic enhancements removed and replaced with basic prosthetics. Behind him stood a small group of his former soldiers. "We've come to request asylum," Voss said when Elena met him at the gate. Elena studied the man who had once hunted her through the mountains. "Why?" "Because you were right," Voss replied simply. "About Marcus, about the planet, about everything. We were soldiers following orders, but that doesn't excuse what we did." Elena looked at Kai, who nodded slightly. The Alpha Monarchs believed in redemption for those who truly sought it. "You'll have to earn your place here," Elena said. "No special treatment because you're former military." "We understand," Voss said. "We're prepared to work." Within weeks, Voss and his men had become valuable members of the community. Their technical skills helped improve the settlement's defenses, while their military discipline made them excellent teachers for the security force that protected the Alpha Monarch territory from remaining corporate interests. As the seasons changed, Elena found herself changing too. The neural implants she had once hidden were now openly acknowledged and upgraded with Alpha Monarch biotechnology. The enhancements didn't make her superhuman, but they allowed her to interface directly with the planet's natural systems and communicate more effectively with both the wildlife and the ancient technology. She was becoming something new, not quite human as the term had once been defined, but not an Alpha Monarch either. She was a bridge between worlds, a translator who could speak the languages of science, nature, and diplomacy. One evening, as Elena worked in her laboratory analyzing soil samples from the restored mining sites, Kai joined her with news that would change everything. The Deep Space Communications Array has detected incoming ships, he said. A diplomatic mission from Earth. Elena looked up from her microscope. How many? 12 vessels, including scientific research ships and cultural exchange vessels. They want to study what we've built here. Elena smiled. Word of their success had reached the core worlds of human space. Scientists and diplomats from Earth itself were coming to see how humans and enhanced humans could live in harmony with their environment. Are you ready to become famous? Kai asked. I never wanted fame, Elena replied. I just wanted to do good science and protect this beautiful world. Sometimes those goals lead to the same place. As Elena prepared for the arrival of the Earth delegation, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Less than a year ago, she had been a prisoner in her own life, trapped by fear and the cruelty of others. Now she was a leader, a scientist, and a symbol of humanity's potential for growth and positive change. The planet Kepler 4042c had taught her that survival wasn't just about individual strength or intelligence. It was about cooperation, understanding, and the willingness to change when change was needed. Humans could be destroyers, but they could also be builders and healers. Standing on her balcony that night, Elena looked up at the stars where the Earth ships were approaching. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. But tonight, she was content to listen to the sounds of her thriving community. Human voices and Alpha Monarch songs blending together like instruments in a cosmic orchestra. She had escaped more than just a cruel husband. She had escaped the limitations of what it meant to be human, discovering that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to become something better than it had been before. The future was bright with possibility,